Good morning. I'm continuing reading my 2017 article, Thoughts on the Law, Gatekeepers, and Rerooting from Action, Criticism, and Theory for Music Education. As usual, I'll put the article below, and this is a creative response to Randall Alsop's 2016 book, Remixing the Classroom. We're on page 60, Rerooting. Like plants, people require roots. I have a long quote by Simone Weil, or Weil, W-E-I-L. To be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul. It is one of the hardest to define. A human being has roots by virtue of his real, active, and natural participation in the life of a community, which preserved in living shape certain particular treasures of the past and certain particular expectations for the future. End quote. While Simone Weil was writing after World War II, when the greatest uprooting force was war, today we contend with the results of war, climate crises, advertisements, and professional responsibilities. We move away from communities that preserve and shape diverse cultures and become individual modern persons, reduced to the minimal unit of several abstract categories, alienated from one another and enclosed from the commons. Facing enclosure, Bates recommends, quote, a process of recombining domains of human experience and knowledge that probably should not have been separated in the first place, end quote. Let's stop right there, right? Don't you love the way Vince Bates writes? It's just plain, straight, simple, and true. Coming back into it. I call this recombining, rerooting, as a part of a philosophy of music education on soil. Music education on soil looks to cultivate human and non-human relationships outside of institutions. Looking to soil as a metaphor, we see a living substance, a soil community. As Rachel Carson said, but what happens to these incredible, numerous, and vitally necessary inhabitants of the soil when poisonous chemicals are carried down into their world, end quote. Just as Rachel Carson identified industrial chemicals upsetting the balance of soil communities, industrial music education has coincided with the loss of diversity of musical cultures. Education teaches consumption. And here's a long quote from Prakash and Esteva, Madhu Suri Prakash and Gustavo Esteva from 2008. It is impossible to package the cultures of the other for transmission and consumption in the global classroom. Packaged for transportation to and consumption within the classroom, they must be severely uprooted, severed from the soils and waters, the ecological or natural niches that they were born, and commons and community without which they must die out, rendered extinct. End quote. Education at its worst, which occurs too often, is culturicide. In the wake of education, the cultures of subsistence collapse. How, then, can we music educate in schools without decreasing diversity? Should we even answer the question before we explore possibilities for music teaching and learning without institutions, without schooling? So pause right there for a second. Right, so much scholarships done by graduate students, right? Well-meaning as they are, right? Just like the Peace Corps, right? Going in and destroying cultures without any real knowledge of what they're doing, right? With well-meaning, Ivan Illich said back in the 60s of the Peace Corps, to hell with good intentions, right? Father Illich was right, Like, I'm sorry that most of our scholarships done by doctoral students who don't know their left hand from their right, but it's time to know, right? These institutions and you as part of it are culturicide, right? Uprooting existing cultures. Okay, continuing on. Institutionalization benefits the few musics over the many musics, the elite musics over the common musics, uniformity over diversity. To step into these institutions is to step out of diverse soil and into no place, set apart from reality. Student, teacher, and professor are all no place designations, actual people who have been uprooted from soil. That music educators, myself included, are educated in such no places calls to question our judgment when it comes to living well, to cultivating sustainability and diversity. That children have been educated by institutions, industry generated musics, and university generated teachers brings to question what openness might mean. What possibilities can be considered by institutional designations? Can music education cultivate rather than extinguish diversity? Sometimes the sensible thing is just to pretend nothing has changed. Allow official state representatives to keep their dignity, even show up at their offices and fill out a form now and then. But otherwise, ignore them. That's a quote from Graeber, right? A music educator on soil may pay minimal lip service to policy and policymakers. And in policy, less is better. But real students, who are real members of real communities, are their interest. Music educators on soil recognize that the law can never cultivate diversity because the law doesn't cultivate life or culture. Soil communities do. Break in there, right? It's pretty harsh words for the field I work in, right? And this is what teachers are called to do, right? Jump through those hoops you need to, but then otherwise, educate your kids, right? Have them make sure that they understand the living soil on which they land, right? Not just the institutional school of the institutional reality of the school, but their actual communities, the towns they live in, the farms, the woods, the nearby parks, the waterways that give them clean water or not so clean water, their grandmas and grandpas and aunts and uncles, and everybody who has some knowledge about living that's beyond what they know, that's to their reality, and not just the teachers who often have a different reality and a different way of surviving than grandma and grandpa, right? To the extent we can, we need to help people reroot. Okay, back to, would it be better that we, the rooted people, walk away from the obscure doors of the law rather than opening them? So there I'm returning to reference to the Kafka, right? Where the person just sat outside the doors of the law until he died, right? Okay, continuing. Also recognizes the possibility in his analysis of another institution, the Common Core Standards in Musics. And this is from also, quote, "It matters very little to me just how well-intentioned or progressive the standards may be in their outlook or intent. A system shapes its participants in particular ways. Its participants give form to its structure in particular ways. This is a problem of borders and containment," end quote. Right? So he sees it in the Common Core Standards, Department of Education institutionalization, right? We have to also see it in the own walls of our specific institutions and how the borders and containment shape participants' possibilities to be open, their reality, right? And we need to open to the natural borders of their bioregion. Okay, continuing on. All institutions construct borders to produce containment. It could also be said of teacher education programs and public school generated music where teachers validate themselves with names of long-dead male composers like Orff and Kodai. It could be said of well-intentioned schools themselves in the business of uprooting children from their homes and cultures, as if by some alchemy in a laboratory, changing them into new modern consumerist beings. Is an open philosophy open to the voice of people who teach and children who learn, to parents, grandparents, their priests and shamans, community musicians and soundscapes, their rooted, historic, actual culture? Can we open gates to gardens? I see students becoming open to the institutions, progressive in outlook or intent. Teachers need better ways better rewards for staying afield and fewer for staying put, according to also. Theoretically, or actually, are there ways of staying put as good? A metaphor of straying afield is nowhere more evident than in higher education, where uprooted professors bounce from job to job looking for the ever-elusive better fit. Public school teachers can model this uprooted life and experience the same dissatisfaction and impotence in the face of community because they will not live in a community, never becoming soil agents themselves. They will exist nowhere, which is where they begin after leaving university music education programs. What if the man from the company had left the Gatekeeper, part of an institution made for generating dropouts, and returned to the country, to a specific place not important enough for Kafka to consider naming? University music programs predate upon student desires. Quote, the college music performance professorate will have its own place in hell for fostering the dreams of naive 17 and 18-year-olds who fervently believe that a solo career in classical performance awaits them like a pot of gold at the end of a baccalaureate, when in fact they are being recruited to fill vacant slots in faculty teaching schedules and in accordance to the college's large ensemble needs, end quote. That's from the extended paper given by John Cradis in 2007 that eventually became his famous article in MEJ, right? Continuing on after that quote. Music teacher education also has power to predate upon our desires. Is walking away from the gates of the law even possible? What if she lived and loved, dug dirt and planted, revealed and caroused instead of waited, a passive institutionalized music education student? Life is outside and below our feet, ready to be lived without needing permission from institutions. Can the music educator be entirely de-schooled? Probably not. She will probably find himself bound by some institution or another. Gaining entry into music education means institutionalization, professionalization, and then moving further from soil to find a job. It can then result in living an unsustainable, unhappy, and uprooted modern life, the life of Homo educandus musicae, who indoctrinates the next generation into the myth of music scarcity. Scholars cannot provide answers, just possibilities. This essay has searched for rerooting possibilities. These may or may not be open possibilities. The internet open source movement has shown its true colors from moving from freewheeling adventurers to officers in the service of ever greater regulation and surveillance. These are two sides of the same institutionalized coin, taking people from face-to-face conversation to industry-mediated chatting. Can we imagine a possible way beyond music education, also beyond music industry? I don't know yet. To know would require more analysis. Regardless, I don't think it is a good choice to reconstruct music education without fully challenging it, deconstructing it, and imagining musicking, teaching, and learning without it. I'm not sure it is, to quote Jorgensen, far easier to deconstruct a set of ideals and practices than to reconstruct them, end quote. If it were, we'd have fewer constructs and more soil. Our field has a case of premature reconstruction disorder, and every article ends with a little bow telling the teacher what to do. My scholarship has been guilty too, but premature reconstruction of music education limits the ability to fully imagine life without cheering on the profession. Maybe answers will emerge in Santayana's mountains and woods, or in rooted cultures, or even in industry. We can't find answers if the only place we look is between our ears and within our institutional walls. Can we begin imagining deinstitutionalized music education? And then, after an extensive and disciplined analysis, we can observe what possibilities emerge in actual places for the possibility of music education. That's it. Have a great day.